So I decided to rewatch Red vs. Blue, and it's been a good while. I'm not caught up with it for sure. I'm sure they're still making it, but I'm not 100% certain on that, and I haven't looked that up before I started making this. So yeah, but I don't know if it's because Halo Infinite got announced and everyone's really excited about that. I don't know if it's because I saw Wooly versus playing it for the first time, playing Halo for the first time and going through that, and maybe I just needed a feeling of nostalgia. I really don't know, but I was just like, you know what? Let's just do it. I'm feeling it, and I need something else to help me put off finishing Bug Fables yet again. I really got to finish that game anyway. So I decided to go back, and it was nice. It's very odd going back and watching some of the older episodes, though. A lot of their jokes kind of stem from references or swearing to be funny, and in fact, just so my channel doesn't get yeeted now or in the future, just because you know how YouTube is with making things like friendly for the platform or whatever. So I'm just gonna avoid that whole problem, and phrase it this way: they say the R word a lot, like a surprising amount, and like just going back and seeing how edgy some of their jokes were very early on is very interesting. Granted, I mean, it was the beginning, it was them starting out. Machinima wasn't really a thing, or it was like in its early stages, early years. It wasn't like something so widely popular as it eventually became and kind of isn't now. At least I don't think. Are people still making machinimas? At least to the level that they were like maybe 10 years ago? I don't think they are, but at any rate, these guys were like pioneers for that. And I don't think, I mean, despite any other moderate successes, I don't think nothing's gotten to the level that Red vs. Blue has. That is not only like beloved by its own fans, but it's like the developers of said game have acknowledged it and even put some of those people in their games. I think that's the only thing. But going back to the show itself, it's kind of impressive to see all the clever editing tricks they had to do back in the day. And I rewatched kind of like the remastered-ish version of the early seasons, where, initially they had to have like an extra player as a cameraman. They had to do like clever editing because, two characters couldn't get in the same Jeep unless they were the same color. They just had to do a lot of clever stuff. They had a few mistakes when they initially made it. Like some people had the wrong armor color, but even then, I mean, I'm kind of impressed with how they worked around all of the all the limitations that they had. I mean, it's really impressive. But yeah, the first season was rough. There were a few good jokes, but a lot of it was, if we swear, it'll be funny. Let's talk about, Master Chief and like ask why is it called Warthog. It was a lot of like, it felt like direct Halo references or references to some TV show or movie, and just like, okay. I mean, that's not really funny, but a nice attempt. But they still had some good jokes in there, like, why are we here? Something existential. No, what? I mean, why are we right here, right now? And then Chupa Thingy. I mean, that was just within the first two episodes. They had at least those two really solid jokes. And then, throughout the first season, there were a few good ones. Some of them were really hit or miss. But I think with season 2 and then going onward, they improved a lot. The jokes got funnier. They kind of figured out what they were doing in a lot of ways. They kind of had a feel for where the show was sort of going. I don't think they had a plan for the rest of the show, but, they kind of had an idea of how they wanted to continue for a while. And, a lot of the jokes kept getting funnier. They were more consistently funny. It wasn't just saying something edgy to be funny anymore, or at least not nearly as often. Like good God, some of those early episodes were almost too edgy for me to handle. And I love edgy stuff, whether it's edgy cringe or I'm dark and cool kind of edgy. Like, sometimes I really like that stuff. But the number of times they said cockbite, which I found out, I should have realized this years ago. Rooster Teeth, cockbite, that parallel, I can't believe I didn't pick up on. But anyway, they said that a lot, like to an annoying degree. And I'm like, that just doesn't, if you say it in the right situation, it has some punch to it. But when the way they said it so much was just, didn't land a lot. I mean, it landed like once or twice, but then the rest of the times it's like, okay, you're just saying it to say it more often. So just, dial it back a little. But, as I said, they introduced more characters. They were getting a feel for how things were going. They figured out what they were doing. They figured out what each character was and, how they could be funny with those personalities. The voice actors, got a better feel for their characters. And you can kind of see if you watch it from the beginning and you switch between two seasons. Like, I would say the first and second season and the second and third season, a couple of the voices, like especially I would say Caboose's, changed drastically. And then Sarge between season 1 and 2, I think, that's another drastic change. And I mean, it's impressive to see how it's kind of all developed. And I would say seasons 1 through 5 are probably my favorite parts of the show overall. Actually, I don't even know if I'd include season 1 in that. I'd probably say season 2 through 5. As much as I would not go without watching season 1 to watch the rest of the 5 seasons. But yeah, I like grew up with that. When I found out about Red vs. Blue, I think they were in like the 70s or something as far as episodes go. Like, that was a good part of my young childhood, not young childhood, but like old childhood, early adolescence. Like, a lot of their early jokes were really iconic. I don't think a lot of their jokes now are quite as well known. I mean, when you think of Red vs. Blue, you always think of Chupa Thingy, or like John Wayne would have done, or Why Are We Here? And just, a lot of the jokes, or Bow Chicka Bow Wow. Like, now I haven't, like, I watched some of the recent-ish seasons, like, a couple of years ago. Whichever ones were in Halo 4, I've watched those. But, and I think one for Halo 5, I don't remember. But, while a couple of those jokes did land, they weren't quite as memorable for me. Not quite as memorable as season 5. I mean, not up to season 5. Like, I think the only one joke, the one standout joke that I remember that stands out and I still think is funny is the whole bit with getting shot in the lap. I don't remember what season that's from, but, I don't know. And at some point, I just gave up on watching the show. But I can go back and rewatch seasons 1 through 5 whenever. I mean, I don't do it too often because then it'll get stale. And it was nice to go back after not watching it for several years. As for what comes after season 5, which kind of wraps everything up nicely, if you wanted to stop there, you could. But as far as after that, I would say what comes immediately after it is pretty good, all things considered. They still have some solid jokes. I feel like how good the humor is kind of plateaus early on in like season 6, but the story is a bit more intense. It's more focused, so there's that going on, and a couple of the characters get developed a bit more. You add a couple of new characters and develop them a bit more, and that was kind of nice. And up to a point, whichever point they finished off the fight with the meta is another good ending point, because yet again, it feels like a good stopping point. It's like, they can have their happy ending. There's no huge plot holes like going on. You could just stop there and everything's tied up in a nice little bow and everyone lived happily ever after, mostly. But that's also like season 6 through, was it 6, 7, and 8 is the next area where I think you could watch and then stop after that, I think. At some point during that's when Monty Ohm came onto the team and started, animating the action scenes for Red vs. Blue. And, they don't age super great, but the choreography is on point. I can say that much. And, like, if you watch some of the earlier action scenes and, like, animated parts, you can see like clipping. The models don't match what's going on around them. It looks like they're pasted on, which is really awkward. But what can you do? And then as it goes further and further, it starts to look better. But yeah, I feel like there's some good jokes. The action is grade A, as far as choreography at least. And then you have another finished plot where you could stop, or you could go to the point where I stopped, which was finishing all the way up to season 10. And I would say seasons 9 and 10, writing wise, were probably some of the weakest. I mean, you have the fully animated segments, which were cool. But aside from the cool action, two things. One, there weren't as many jokes, and the jokes that were there frequently didn't land as hard. But also, the way the story was written also didn't really feel planned out enough. It didn't feel like certain things were explored enough. It feels like some things had too much attention on them. It feels like there could have been a little more work on how seasons 9 and 10 went. I will grant that the Halo Reach bits were kind of funny because, when you can't rely on cool action and gripping story, they have to go back to the roots and be like, okay, if these people are just standing around and talking, what can they say that's funny? And again, I feel like the jokes did kind of plateau at some point, and then they started going back down the plateau. But, once you get to season 10 and finish that off, that's kind of the whole freelancer arc. Like, that's the point at which the story that was written is done. Everything that was established before is done and over with. There's pretty much nowhere left to go. Unless you start a new story with, a new plot, something else is going on. Now they have a new mission. And, I started watching that far at one point, and then I just decided not to go back. There's a couple standout jokes later on. I don't know if I mentioned that already. But, it's not as memorable. The action scenes are still there, but you could easily just look those up on YouTube. And I will say their action has gotten better, though I don't know if the choreography is quite as good because, Monty died and he's not on the team anymore, and it's really sad. But, I just feel like what I have seen of more recent seasons than what I rewatched are weaker in a lot of aspects. I think the writing has gotten a little more focused, but not necessarily better. And with following the same characters for so long, it feels like, if you have the same characters for 10 seasons, I feel like you've explored all you can with those characters. And I know at one point they tried to go deeper in with Tucker and Washington and try to establish this whole mentor, like, disciple thing, and it just didn't feel right because, Red vs. Blue was always about a ragtag group of losers just standing around and talking, maybe doing something sometime to save their own skins, or just to, do random crap. And I feel like, especially after season 10, they get into too much trouble. That wasn't because they're screwing around, or it wasn't because of their own friends getting into trouble and needing to be bailed out. It was, they're helping other people fight another fight. And it just, it kind of lost that spirit of the show. So that's kind of why I haven't continued. That's why I didn't go back and rewatch anything after 10. But what I did rewatch, I enjoyed. It was nice to go back, especially to, seasons 1 through 8 and get all the best jokes. Watching seasons 9 and 10, getting the cool action. It was a good time. And it was it was really interesting to see how Rooster Teeth was more early on. Not so much now when they're not the small time group of guys and, some girls, but it's just a smaller group of people. And now they're just this monolith company. They've absorbed like 2 or 3 other companies into their own. And it's, things just aren't the same now. They're, for all intents and purposes, they're a corporation now. They're not just a small company, a small business. And, whenever that happens, something gets lost along the way. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worst. I would say that goes for both of those. But, we'll always have the old stuff as long as. I mean, I saw recently that they decided they're going to remove a lot of older videos that are no longer, acceptable or whatever. But my only real concern is some of the more important stuff, like Red versus Blue. You can't dump on that legacy. I don't care if the jokes were edgy. I don't care if they're saying the R word. Like, just don't touch that. I mean, if you want to remake it in like a newer engine, I don't know if there's like a Halo 1 multiplayer engine. I could be there might not be. I have no idea. But even then, I wouldn't touch it. I hope they don't ever. Because I always want to have. I mean, I guess I have seasons 1 through 5 on DVD. If I want to go back and rewatch them, but I still feel like they shouldn't dump on that legacy. But I'll always have that, and that's good to know. So yeah, that was my rewatch of Red vs. Blue. Had a good time. Maybe I'll do it again in another couple years. But yeah, it was nice. So thank you for listening. Press all the buttons, and have a great day.